Hi guys, welcome to the field. Today we are having a second session of our course, and today we're discussing how to shoot on a spot. In the previous lesson you learned how to fix the phone's brain, and now we'll be fixing your hands. Alright, so the first thing we do, we are setting up the camera exactly on a spot where you're going to shoot. On my S23 Ultra I always stick to 8K. It's not just so I can crop in later. It's actually about how the phone processes the image. In 8K, the footage looks way more natural and expensive, instead of that over-sharpened digital look.
Perfect.
Your phone might handle things differently, but whatever you do, don't go lower than 4K, otherwise you risk missing out some details. And we can see that right now the image is super bright. So I switched on the setting where it highlights where the image is overexposed. I can just toggle it off. We begin from the FPS. In 8K, we cannot go higher than 30 frames per second. Since it's super bright here, we can reduce the ISO to the lowest position and it's gonna be 50. We can still see that it's a bit too bright. And that's where the shutter speed comes. So right now it's 1/30, which is definitely too slow and too bright. We can make it 160 and that will give us the most cinematic results. However, we see that it's still too bright, and that's where the sunglasses for your lens come.
Nice.
So here where we talk about the elephant in the room, cage from the small rig. And this one is quite a useful tool because it helps first of all to hold your phone very firmly, and it will help to smooth the action. And secondly, it allows us to attach the anti-filter, which is basically the sunglass for your lens, which comes right here. This is super convenient and it helps to reduce the brightness of the image and achieve the cinematic shutter speed, because otherwise you will have to bump your shutter speed to 1/1000, 1/2000, and then the image becomes a bit jittery, which we would like to avoid. Of course, for the mobile videography, it's not like super crucial to keep up with the cinematic 180-degree rule of a shutter speed, but it's preferable. If we can do it, then it's better to do it because it will help to convey the cinematic feeling to the viewer. So here we can see that the image is still a bit too bright, and to reduce the brightness, we just turn the adjustable anti-filter and you can see the magic happens immediately. So the last one which is remaining is the white balance, and we can see right now it's a bit on the bluish side. We can add a bit of a temperature, so roughly like that. So now where the show begins. So when we're talking about the secret sauce of a smooth footage, we have to switch our normal human walk to a stabilized cat walk. And it looks quite simple. Basically, you have to bend your knees, squeeze your elbows to your body, and you hold the camera tightly. So basically, the stabilization comes from your smooth movement and tight grip on your camera. And from here, you can already manipulate just with your elbows, not with your wrists, because exactly this motion helps to create the most smooth footage. Also, when you turn around, don't turn with your hands, turn around with your elbows squeezed to your body firmly. And trust me, that will create a world of a difference.
That was easy.
The choice of the 30 frames per second helps us to slow down the footage later on the timeline. So if our timeline is 25 frames per second, that means we can slow down the footage and get a bit slower, smoother footage visually. So today is quite a good example of the sun effect in our shot. We can see that before, when the sun was super bright, we had to reduce the ISO, we had to make the image a bit darker. Right now we can see the sun highs and the image is too dark. So we basically, now if we have the ND filter, we can just turn the ND and make it a bit brighter. If you don't have the ND, you can play with the shutter speed, and that will help you to achieve the proper exposure of your image. However, as I mentioned before, if you go like for the super fast shutter speed, then you lose the natural motion blur. The secret to keep your footage still cinematic and not to show everyone that you adjusted your shutter speed so incorrect, let's say by cinematic standards, is just to keep your movement really steady and slow, both for the camera and for the subject in the shot. Always look for some interesting moments, like in this case we can see the sun highs in between the skyscrapers, and if we shift just a bit, like for another half meter, we can see how the sun, which is hidden behind the skyscraper, suddenly shows up. always try to use the foreground and background. So here is a good example of creating the 3D cinematic shape for the video. As you can see, I'm using here the branches as the foreground, and we have the main subject, which is this kind of tunnel, the arch just behind the tree. And that helps to achieve the cinematic depth through the layers in your video. So one more time, here is the foreground and then the beautiful background. And guys, when you shoot with your mobile phone, try to avoid very complex motions. Try to stay stable on one spot. You have to bend your knees, hold your phone still with both of your hands. Don't cover your camera accidentally, because it happened to me actually more than one time, unfortunately. And move very slightly. Mostly move with your knees. As you can see, I keep my hands very still. I don't move my hands at all, but I switch my balance from one leg to another. I just basically serve as a human slider in this case. Always look for some interesting angles. So we always see the world from one height. And as soon as you go a bit lower or a bit higher, you switch the perspective. That helps to achieve some interesting angles. So in this case, we can see that from that angle, kind of frame, through which we can see the background. Also, whenever you shoot such a complex scenarios, whenever you have a foreground, a background, fix your focus point, because in a case if you don't do it, the focus can automatically shift to the foreground, and perhaps you don't want that, right? So let's fix the focus first, and whatever we do, the focus remains in the same position. You should keep the 3x3 grid on your screen at all times. Most people stick a person right in the dead center. Instead, try leading them up on one of the left or right vertical lines to create a more intentional look. If the person is looking towards the side, give them some room in the frame to look into. It's a tiny shift that immediately makes your shot feel like it was directed rather than just recorded. One of another great tricks to keep your video more interesting and engaging is switching your lenses. So while we're shooting at Blackmagic app, we can switch the lenses while keeping the 8K resolution. If we shoot on a native Samsung camera app, to switch to the 3x or especially 10x, we have to switch to 4K, and then we can see the immediate image quality reduction. By switching to a longer lens like 3x or especially 10x, and by shifting your body from one side to another, we create the parallax effect. That's when we see different layers shift against each other, and that creates a super cinematic feeling. Also, the advice especially applicable for such a bright, vibrant places like Dubai. Sometimes it becomes too bright and you have to seek for the shadow. Why we want to do that? First of all, you're not getting super hot.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
Secondly, it helps to reduce the brightness in a shot, and in this case, you can use the proper shutter speed without even using the ND filter. Third, it helps to reduce the harshness of the light and helps to create the soft light on the face of your models, of your subjects. That really helps to achieve a bit better, more cinematic vision. Also, if you have to choose between the bright elements and the dark elements, because as we can see here, we can see this stripy overlay, that means sky is basically non-existent right now in the shot. It's better in this case to expose by the sky, because it's always easier to pull out the shadows in your shot than to pull out the overexposed bright parts. Alright, now you learned how to set the correct settings, how to create the intentional movement, how to control the exposure of your shot. Now it's time to go to the computer, transfer all the files, and check in DaVinci Resolve how we can create something cinematic out of it. So I'll see you in lesson number 3, the post-production.